Last Christmas we reviewed Arnold, and the very next day we gave Burden away. This year, to save me from tears, we're gonna review something special. Die Hard, it's Die Hard. We're gonna review Die Hard. Should we just dive straight in? I assume we're on a timer. What is the out? Have we got a hard out?
I can't remember what I said now. Let me look at the diary.
Just
Basically
so I can keep an eye on it. I mean, yesterday's one was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. So
yesterday's one was what? Sorry.
The last one we did, Saturday's one, whatever it was 2 hours and 15 minutes. So
yeah, ideally about 2 hours, if not less.
Great, that's fine. Yeah, cool. I think I have less to say, weirdly, on this one. Maybe I don't. We'll find out.
Oh yeah. How long is it going to take us to suck Die Hard's dick?
Well, let's find out.
Yep.
Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews. I'm definitely leaving that in.
I thought you would. The second I said it, I was like, oh, that's going in.
Oh dear. Welcome to Rewind Reviews, a podcast where occasionally we throw away any potential YouTube profits by swearing in the first minute and or using some of the language that wouldn't be appropriate. Hello to the not sponsors we definitely don't have on the YouTube video this week, because we opened with sucking Die Hard's dick as a phrase.
Hey, I didn't say it for the podcast. It's your choice to edit it in. I don't know how you're going to do it now, because we've got a little musical ditty, and we've got that. You're just going to keep starting the credits.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing about this is going to go up like Christmas Day, so it's a time of peace and love amongst all humanity or whatever, and just we're opening with that. Love it. How
many do you think are listening on Christmas Day, though?
Yeah, almost none. Almost none. If you are listening to this on Christmas Day, God bless you.
If you're listening to this on Christmas Day, right, comment on the YouTube or comment in the Discord and say, I'm listening to Die Hard on Christmas Day. And if we see that it was genuinely posted on Christmas Day, if you send us your address, we'll send you a mug or a t-shirt with certain parameters of, postage costs.
I am putting that is all on Chris. Fucking hell, that's what mug or t-shirt are we sending them, Chris?
I'll work that out if anyone actually listens on Christmas Day.
Yeah, but the thing is, somebody might start this, hear that, not listen to the rest of it, and just post. Oh, you've opened yourself up. You've opened yourself up.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I take it back, because then other people that might not actually be listening might see that and be like, "That's clearly a thing." So I take it back. I changed my mind. I'm Scrooging it. Yeah, but let us know still, and it'll be lovely.
But also, what T-shirt or mug were you going to send them? Are you going to stick our logo on something? I don't. What do
you could? Yeah, you could make.
We don't have merch.
Yes, but it's fucking 2021, I think. Yeah, 2021, Dan. You can get T-shirts made. You can get mugs made.
You can.
It's fine. I have faith in that.
Well, it's not fine. Also, it's extra fine now because you've already taken it back.
Yeah, I've subtracted the offer, so it's all good. Anyway,
dear.
Die Hard, Dan. What was your... Oh, well, I chose it, so I guess I should launch. So, well, first of all, I mean, this isn't about my history, but I realised watching this, I would say, if someone was to say, what's your favourite film? I would say Good Burger, the Keenan and Kel movie, for emotional reasons, or I would say Back to the Future. But even those two films don't make me grin and literally get giddy with excitement and hold my attention in quite the way Die Hard does. Multiple points. And I realised I do it every time we watch Die Hard. Multiple points I turn to Jess it's Die Hard! So, despite this incredible love for it, which obviously we'll talk about more, I got into Die Hard really late. So I think it was my first experience of watching Die Hard was round a friend's house at the end of a party that she had. We all went into the living room and watched Die Hard, but she had a friend there that liked The Office. So I spent the entirety of the film trying to talk and flirt and failing to do so with her. So I didn't really pay any attention to Die Hard. I was all about the flirt game.
You're a nightmare to watch a film with, I guess.
Well, it's one of those
if I was trying to watch Die
drinking,
Hard and you were I'd be...
I was trying to think about this because I've definitely got mates that would have been like, shut the fuck up. So I think maybe we were writing notes back and forth on a phone. Like, genuinely, I have a vague memory of it being done that way. Yeah, I also remember, like, adding her on Facebook afterwards and, like, never speaking to her again. So, yeah, I definitely wasn't doing a good job of my flirty note banter. And then, so that was my first experience and didn't pay too much attention to the film. And then Ronnie was like, who's friend of the podcast, Ronnie was like, it's madness that you've never really seen Die Hard. We're going to watch Die Hard. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So we did a film day. And I think the last film we watched that day, so I'm pretty sure we did Lion King, Inception, and then Die Hard.
Fucking what a triple header.
Mate, even worse when you find out one of our dear friends who was there. We're watching Lion King, and literally there's a moment you could feel the room change as the three of us that were in the room with him whilst watching Lion King went, oh, fucking hell, his dad died 4 weeks ago. Like, it just completely not the film to watch, The Lion King. And I voiced it, and I went, sorry, mate, this is probably an inappropriate movie to watch, isn't it? And he went, I was just thinking that, but it's all good. He's a wonderful man. He could see that it was a genuine mistake. But we're not here to talk about Lion King. So then Die Hard plays, and I'm just blown away by it. And I'm sat there going, this is really fucking good. And everyone's like, yeah, like, that's why Die Hard's a very popular film. Like, what, are you surprised that Die Hard is good? Like, you know that, like, it's kind of its own institution. Like, what are you doing? Like, of course you should be watching Die Hard. Of course it's amazing. And instantly was like, well, we're watching this every year at Christmas. Watched it again that Christmas, and then ever since I've watched it every year at Christmas.
Yeah.
That's me. That's my history with Die Hard. What about you, Daniel?
Well, first of all, I mean, I still can't. Well, there's two things I can't get over: the flirting through Die Hard thing. I don't know. I feel like I have questions, but also so many that none of them are actually verbalizing. Just do you know what I mean? Do you want to tell you something that just like makes your mind melt so much that you just literally can't even process? Watch Die Hard, mate.
Yeah, it was a mistake. Yeah.
Look,
I was young. I'm like. I gotta say, I'm like.
Die Hard's for life,
16,
not just at Christmas,
no,
Chris. Girls will come and go.
You know what? I must have been, because in order to have been single, it must have been while we were at uni. So I reckon maybe first year of uni.
Wow.
So yeah, I was old enough to know better. Definitely,
You were
I must
old
have
enough
been
to know
like
better.
18, 19. Yeah.
And then I'm sorry, I still, I mean, all right, the mistake with your friend's recent history, notwithstanding, because that's obviously
we did
separate...
we did feel awful. Can I just say,
Yeah.
because I'm very conscious that we've started a Christmas podcast talking about my friend's dad's death and sucking Die Hard's dick. My friend is the kind of person that like we literally laughed about the madness of that last week. So I'm not being insensitive there.
But what I'm saying is, putting that aside,
appalling.
I still can't quite get over the decision of those three films. So I just want to I want to understand the logic of this. So Lion King, Inception, and Die Hard. Can you explain the thinking between that triple header?
Yes, classic films that the people in the room hadn't seen.
So, like multiple people hadn't seen, or there was like one chosen for each person.
No, there was, I think, essentially one chosen for each person.
Right.
So
and your one was Die Hard.
Well, actually, Inception as well at that point. I hadn't seen that either.
Lord.
But I'd seen The Lion King. So yeah, it was classics that the people in the group hadn't seen. I think there was meant to be another. I think it was then meant to be, in fact, possibly, because we did Alien and Aliens as part of these sort of film days, and I don't know if actually Alien was also done that day, or The Thing, or Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was done separately. I know that.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure the three we watched that day were The Lion King, Inception, and
well, there you go.
And Die Hard. Let me double check, because put it on Facebook. Let me see if I can double check.
Just so strange. Anyway, yeah, because I just can't imagine watching that. What a tonal dissonance! Like I understand the logic, I guess now, but like even then, it's like I don't understand like how anyone would think that would make it good.
But when it's a day of watching movies, in a way, it's not the worst thing to juggle it up in terms of genres, tone, aesthetics, cinematography. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I just feel like those movies definitely don't complement each other. But yeah, I guess that's fine. So Die Hard.
But also defending the decision, I think, how much does something need to complement each other when they're all fundamentally excellent films?
Oh yeah. I mean, if we're just going like, are they good? Yeah, of course.
Do you know what I mean? If they're poor quality, I think complementing is a bigger issue.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's see if I can confirm.
Yeah,
so what's your history with Die Hard?
What's that, sorry?
So what's your history with Die Hard?
Yeah, so Die Hard for me, it's one of those films that I can't remember the first time I saw it, because it has always been. Like, in the beginning, there was Die Hard. I have always loved Die Hard from being very young. Like, I remember being, God, I couldn't have been any older than 6 or 7 and watching that film. It has just always been a part of my life. And I think, weirdly, it came to me through, I think, Die Hard 3's release. Let me quickly check the date on that. This is one of those movies that I kind of went back to because so Die Hard with a Vengeance was 95. So I would have been 89, 7 or 8.
Okay.
So I suspect what happened was they put Die Hard on TV around the release of Die Hard 3. I obviously didn't go to the cinema to watch Die Hard 3. I'd struggled to convince my parents to take me to Jurassic Park, and in the end my auntie had to take me because they thought it might be too scary. Instead, my cool aunt took me and wasn't telling them that's what she was doing. All my cousins had seen it, I hadn't, so me and my aunt went as a separate trip to see Jurassic Park. But that definitely wasn't happening for a Die Hard film, which I'm pretty sure are like much higher rated than Jurassic Park was.
It really makes me laugh that like your parents had such sort of strict like rules and like such strict guidance for you in terms of what you watched, and every other member of your family, your nan, your aunt, didn't give a fuck.
Yeah, but not just that, but like my parents also like checked out. Like it's almost like it gave me, because how many of the stories of on this podcast of how we first came to a film that we love from our childhood is me watching a film deeply inappropriately for me, and even sort of seeking it out, because like I feel like their attempt to make it taboo made them more interesting to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or them like not paying attention. Like RoboCop's a great example of them just not knowing what the film was. But putting a TV in my bedroom at a very young age was a terrible idea, because it just meant I saw everything anyway. So it didn't stop me, and by making them seem like I shouldn't be watching them, they ended up very much, you know, pushing me to watch films like that. I seem to recall Die Hard was screened sometime around the release of Die Hard Avengers on like ITV or something I was living in Ireland at the time, but ITV was on Channel 5 in Ireland because of RTE 1 and 2. So yeah, I watched it there, and I think, but it's like, but even that I'm not certain of. I just feel like Die Hard has always been a part of my film diet, and you know, over the years I've watched it more times than it's up there for, like, if we were talking about the movies we've reviewed on this podcast and how many times we've seen them, Die Hard is way up there on this list for me in terms of like I know all the lines in and out, like I know each scene to scene. You know, I'm the guy that's going, oh, this next bit's great. This next bit's great.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me, and I think it will even more so because, like I say, we genuinely now watch it every year. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, huge fan. Have been all my life. I mean, the thing is one of those things where as well, looking at the timing, it's also when me sort of getting into Die Hard seems to, if you time it, if it was around Die Hard 3, as I suspect it was, but again, not certain, but around that time, that's also around the time I was getting into Friends, I think? No, when was Friends? What year was Friends?
Friends started in 1994.
Perfect. Yeah, okay, that exactly lines up then. Okay, so I'm not going crazy, because I remember feeling validation from the multiple jokes in later seasons of Friends about Die Hard and about the guys loving Die Hard. I remember getting that reference and understanding that it's this great film and being really pleased with myself. Because I will say, I watched Friends very young. I was watching Friends like in its second and third season, I'm pretty sure, and very distinctly remember not getting half the jokes or feeling like I wasn't getting a lot of the references because of how much of it was like American stuff. But I remember being very pleased that Die Hard, I was like, I get that. I was Captain America, basically. I get that reference. Yeah, and as Chris said, it's become a staple. Most years I watch it at Christmas. There was a weird wilderness period where I didn't get to watch it very often because Nadia had never seen it and had dismissed it as a dumb shooty movie. And she watched it later in life, got into it, and now we pretty much watch it every year because she loves it. I believe she's still not seen any of the sequels, so we're going to try and correct that this year.
Yes, is she on board for that?
What's that, sir?
Because we talked about that briefly last time. Is she on board for watching all four sequels?
She's a little dubious because she knows they don't end up going great, and she also, I think I've biased her a little bit against Die Hard 2 because I've always been a bit like, Die Hard 2, and I think she knows I feel that way. But I really want her to see Die Hard with a Vengeance because I love that movie. I absolutely love that movie.
I'd like it. Like I say, I did it last year. You know, as we've discussed before, I don't go in as in on Die Hard 2 as you. I think it's good. It's just the fifth is the bad one. I think there's merit in every other film.
I think the only other one that's like is pretty close to being a classic though is the third, because the second one has the issue of it's just the first one again. We've seen this. You can watch this and it's better, and it's called Die Hard 1. You know, there's very little to gain from Die Hard 2.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if but you know, we're not here to discuss Die Hard 2, but yeah, I don't know. I still really get a real Die Hard like the Friends thing out of it. I do agree. I think
wasn't the joke in Friends that they were going to watch Die Hard 2 and then the video shop accidentally gave them 2 copies of Die Hard 1, so they just watched Die Hard 1 again.
Because Joey goes, well, let's watch Die Hard again, and then it's Die Hard 2.
Yeah. That joke really resonates with me now, because now I think, yeah, it is. It's basically it's the same movie.
As a film, I think objectively the third is stronger, yes, than 2. Yeah. But yeah, I do really like 2 still. Can I just say I found?
Go on.
Huh?
No.
I found a. You go.
I was just going to say the third one's interesting because one of the reasons I'm convinced that a really, truly good sequel doesn't have to be a carbon copy of the original and can be quite free to completely change what it's doing but still feel like a sequel to the original is because Die Hard with a Vengeance is so good. That's the reason I believe that to be true. You know, we talked about this during the Matrix films when we did them. We talked about how like the idea of going away from what the first one did. Oh, we've already made the Matrix, so let's do, you know, the movie that undercuts a lot of the ideas in the Matrix on purpose, like a subversive film that sort of tries to do something different, and then let's make a gritty war movie that's a Matrix movie. Those ideas in principle are absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with saying let's do something different now, you know. But I think Die Hard is one of the reasons I believe that so truly, because Die Hard with a Vengeance is, compared to Die Hard 2, is like living proof that it's actually better to do something different with your third movie than it is to just do the first one again.
Yeah, and something like Alien to Aliens and Terminator
Perfect.
to Judgment
Exactly.
Day, are the same thing.
Yeah,
Got to
correct.
say, I found so it was October 2016, and so my friend and I, between us, haven't seen a bunch of classic films. So today, Ronnie is making us watch Lion King, Inception, Alien, and Die Hard. So far, we are just disappointed we aren't watching Lion King in sing-along mode. Circle of Life, people. And then that status generated enough comments to make me think you probably commented on it as well. But obviously you're no longer on Facebook, so I can't see that. But yeah, a lot of people questioning how we hadn't seen those films. There is no evidence that Alien was watched that day, because there's no picture of it, and yet there is tweets such as Lion King down, what a film, and guys ... turns out Die Hard is incredible. So yeah,
Was that the order you did it in? Then you went from Lion King to Die Hard. Is that the route?
No, it went Lion King, Inception, and then the next film I reference is Die Hard, which makes me think we only watched the three and watched Alien at a later point.
Right.
But yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Which means I then watched it that Christmas, and then I'm pretty sure watched it every year since.
Yeah. I mean, well, can't blame you. It's it's a stunning film, and as we'll get to, I think a little bit of a fluke. Looking at some of the trivia, I've kind of been forced to reckon with an idea I had, and we talked about this last week. We said this is basically a perfect film in a lot of ways. Like, it's a really tight script. It really gets to the action straight away. It's got simple but clever ideas at its core that don't need to be properly, like, they don't need thorough exploration. And the reason that's clever is that gives you lots of time to do, tension building, action scenes without it feeling like it's taking away from character work or whatever. They give it a very simple, very easy to latch onto conceit, and a very simple, sort of obstacles for the hero to overcome. But as a result, that means they can actually, like, really, it doesn't need to be this masterful thing, like, in terms of, like, it doesn't need to spend all this time, like, intricately developing, like, twists and turns and deep character arcs. So sorry, if I sound a bit distracted, it's because, like, as far as I was aware, there was no one in the flat across from ours, like, no one living in it, and I've just had loads of doors going, so that's someone about to move in. Hopefully not while we're recording, because no, there's no trucks outside. Oh well. Sorry, that was a very weird distraction. That really threw me off. I can't remember what I was saying. Doesn't matter. Die Hard's great.
Yes. Well, you were saying about how you thought it was a perfect film, but actually the Triv shows that.
Oh yes, the Triv
through,
demonstrates some of this was done on the fly. Quite a lot of it was done on the fly.
Quite a lot, yeah.
I don't know if you looked through the Triv before you started recording, Chris, but yeah, it turns out, we'll come to it later, but quite large chunks of this movie were sort of developed as it was being shot.
Yeah, no, I didn't look at IMDb's Triv, but I did watch the episode of the movies that made us about Die Hard, and a lot of it's covered there.
I wish I'd had time to do that. I wanted to, but I didn't get a chance. Maybe you can fill in some of the gaps, because some of the trivia is a bit, like, vague about where its information is coming from, and some of it seems like partially opinion pieces, but I know that the script wasn't complete when they started shooting. Like, there's a bunch of stuff, so yeah.
I hope that the Triv says Frank Sinatra got first refusal at the part without any context as to why.
It does. I've got the reason for that. I understand what happened with that. We'll come to it anyway. So, but it's interesting because I've had to kind of reckon with my thoughts on this film, because I've always thought this was this, like, meticulously brilliant, tightly scripted thing, because it's a nothing wasted sort of movie. Every line, every story beat pays off in some way. And I don't know if this movie was necessarily sort of rescued in the edit, maybe. But the fact this movie is as cohesive as it is actually kind of a fucking fluky miracle, maybe. We'll see. We'll as we talk about it. But let's just talk about it as it is. Let's out of the context of that. Again, the simplicity of the premise of this movie is its strength, I think. Would you agree with that?
What? Sorry, say that again.
The simplicity. We're having an awkward one today, Chris. I'm getting distracted. You're not hearing each other properly.
It's all right, Dan. It's Christmas. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no one's gonna listen anyway. That door's going again. I'm so confused. It's really loud. I'm having a look.
Right, go on.
I can't figure out.
Oh, he's looking. Are you still on mic?
Yeah, I'm still on mic. I'm just looking through the window. See if I can figure out what's going down.
Dan's like one of those, stereotypical middle-aged women peering out his curtains.
Well, no, it's not. We've got blinds, so I'm literally like someone from a shit movie that's put their fingers between two blinds to like widen them to peer through. That's so sad. I can't see what's going on. I have no idea. Maybe I'll shut the door too, so it's not as loud and distracting. Anyway, yeah. So I think the simplicity of the film is its strength, because I think a lot of what works about it because it's such a nice, simple concept in both its plot and its character arcs. I mean, strictly speaking, all that really John McClane learns in this movie is that, apologize while you can, because these things don't. You might not get another chance to. It's a pretty straight. It's a pretty simple. Being stubborn is all well and good, but you could die tomorrow. So.
Yeah, I think it's that core conceit being very clear and easy to follow, and it's just the. Obviously we'd recommend it. Yeah, that's out of the debate, I assume.
Oh yeah, 100%. Sorry, I had to walk away from the mic for a second because there was some like the sort of banging that you would associate with somebody trying to shoulder down a door, like shoulder barge down a door. So I've just gone investigated. There's now no one there. I'm very concerned at what's happening.
Yeah, God. Well, I'll talk for a bit if you wanna go and have a look. So I think obviously we recommend it for those, and if you haven't seen Die Hard, Jesus, go watch it now and then come back to this.
Yeah.
Because obviously from this point on, spoilers. But if you need a refresher, as Dan said, essentially it's a story of a man learning that you should never miss the opportunity to say sorry. And it's basically that comes from him flying to attend his wife's Christmas party in, I can't remember where. LA?
LA. Yeah, it's in LA.
LA, yeah.
It's LA.
Yeah, so he's a New York cop. She lives in LA now. And she goes to her building, which is this kind of huge tower building structure. And then seemingly terrorists, led by Alan Rickman as Hans, attack the building, hold them hostages, and try and get through a safe to rob them, and escape with millions and millions in bonds. John McClane, the cop, is not with the party when they take them, so he manages to run off and scupper their plans in a number of days. Getting involved is his policeman friend Powell on the radio, and other characters such as the FBI and the limo driver, etc., get involved as well. And I think its genius is its simplicity, but also, as we were sort of hinting at earlier, the way everything is like interconnected. The balance of tone as well, when you're looking at it critically, is so beautiful. There's so many little moments, like one of the robbers waiting to shoot someone, noticing that there's chocolate by them, and like reaching into the chocolate stand to steal a bit of chocolate. One of the FBI guys hurting themselves on a shrub as they're running through it.
Yeah,
and these moments.
I've made notes of all these too. I don't think I've ever realised how many of those weird, just bizarrely human moments. It's almost like mistakes being intentionally left in the movie. I made notes of a few because I was just like quite surprised that there were so many of them.
Which was the big thing when the new writer got put on. His big thing was the director wanted him to add more comedy.
Right, which is that's it. That's kind of in my trivia as well, because it talks about how he didn't want to make another dark, action movie or horror because he'd just done Predator, I think. So he wanted to do something different, and that's kind of. But it's all so small, but like really, it's weird how much it adds to it. Like when Johnson and Johnson are in the helicopter, the one that got me, Johnson and Johnson in the helicopter, the two FBI agents that show up later at this hostage situation, and one of them says like, "It's just like Saigon," and he's like, "I was in high school, you ass," like something like that. I can't remember what it is, but it's this really insane exchange that does not at all need to be in the movie, but it does add something. There's just something really weirdly human about it. I don't know. It's it's hard to explain.
It's so layered, and it's like the helicopter is a good example because those guys obviously blow up, and so it's kind of like, and it and maybe we'll talk about it early to avoid saying sentences like this all the time, but when you hear about the scripting process, what's so amazing is there wasn't the time to stop and think, and little things like when they're preparing in the helicopter to shoot them saying, well, if we lose some hostages, we lose some hostages, and being really cavalier and dickish about it, making you not feel as kind of, making it, when they then blow up and die, as an audience member, you're a little bit like, well, they were dickheads, like they were pricks. It feels so deliberate. There's so many things in this film, the bare foot of it all, the fact that the photo is slammed down but then comes back later when Rickman picks it up, Miss Gennaro being set up. There's so much
that makes this feel like the
payoff.
most like most meticulously planned thing. Like even the Christmas Miracle stuff. So the thing where they set up at the beginning of the movie, the tech guy that's breaking into the safe for Alan Rickman's Hans Gruber says, there are 7 of these like sort of fail safes or locks, doors, things that are in our way. I can get you through 6 of them. For the 7th one, there's nothing I can do. You're going to have to hope for a miracle, basically. And they reference the Christmas Miracle multiple times. And the reveal later in the movie, again, we're going straight into spoilers, is that, again, if you haven't seen Die Hard, go see Die Hard. We're absolutely recommending you see Die Hard. Is that, Alan Rickman Hans Gruber knows exactly what the FBI playbook is, and he knows they're going to follow it to the letter. And once they realize it's a hostage situation, which is very much his intent, they're going to cut the power to the whole block, which when they do that, will actually release the final safeguard, stopping them from getting into the safe. And that's set up early in the movie and repeated multiple times so that when it happens, you know immediately what's happening without them having to explain it in that moment. So you get the satisfaction of it happening without them needing to also be like, but it seems that just because they've cut off the power, it's not something that's like set up and paid off within a sentence of each other. Are you listening, Matrix 3? It's stuff that's set up in earlier scenes and then pays off there. It's stuff like that makes you think this is the most meticulously planned movie of all time. Or maybe not all time, but like really high up there though.
Things like one of the stereotypically kind of the crew, basically, in a movie like this, the crew are always slightly expendable, but in a bad version of this film, they're just the criminal crew. In this film, they've gone, well, all right, what if one of the guys he kills early on is the brother of the guy that then survives until the end? And it just adds so much more engagement and weight to what is happening because, we understand why he's so determined to get John McClane and therefore fear for John McClane a little more. I don't know how many times we've watched this movie and there were moments where watching it the other day, we were going, ooh, ow, at his pain. Or like when he's in a situation, it's like, fucking hell, how's he going to get out of this? Well, we know how. We've seen the movie countless times. But it works because they've done really clever things to add weight to all of it.
Mm. Yeah, but again,
the cleverness of...
Go on.
Sorry, go on. Well, even the cleverness of, and this was an accident. So this again is an example of how, and the movie still, even if it was an accident, how they got there, the movie and its creators still deserve all the credit in the world for noticing and executing. But it's things like, so that scene where, I don't know if this is in your trivia, but the scene where Hans and Bruce meet and Hans does his fake accent comes from the fact that someone in the catering, when they were having catering one day, someone asked Alan if he could do an American accent, and he did that. And it made the writer go, oh, wait a second, he's only spoke to Hans in radio. This is an excuse to have these two meet. Because at that point, they were basically wrestling with how can they meet without trying to kill each other right away, because that is what would happen in this situation. But then it became, well, what if they meet and he's not sure whether it's Hans or not. And it's just this fucking really brilliant scene where there's shitloads of tensions because finally the villain and the hero are meeting for the first time. But it's every decision in this movie feels really fucking clever. And like I say, whether by accident or whether they pieced it together as they went along, still deserve credit for making those clever decisions and putting them together.
Yeah, and
it
and
really is.
It's hard to know how much is design and how much is accident when you know how this movie was kind of made written as it was made. So like you mentioned earlier, the picture, introducing the picture early on, the picture of the family and having it put face down, that can't be an accident. But then you hear that they discovered Alan Rickman could do an American accent and create that entire scene, which is one of the best scenes in the movie, on the fly. Then you go, well, okay, maybe all of it was an accident. Like, I don't know. Maybe the episode of the films that made us might have cleared some of that up, because the trivia that I always start, for anyone who doesn't know, I always start with the IMDb trivia and then basically work backwards from that. So I use that as like the baseline for interesting things people think they know about the movie, and then start researching to actually find out if any of it is true. Sometimes a lot of it is true, sometimes big swaths of it aren't, and I have to do a lot of my own research. It varies movie to movie. So maybe the movies that made us think actually explicitly says, what is and what isn't,
true,
an accident, and what is and what isn't was in the script from day one. I don't know, but like for that picture thing, for example, do they explicitly say that's an accident, or is that just that was in the script?
No, only really the voice stuff, and there's something. But at that point, I was making a cup of tea. Something to do with the ambulance and when it appears.
I've got that. That's in my trivia. Deliberate. That is in my trivia.
But like the main impression they give is that it was pretty much all action, and all the sort of humour was then added sort of as they went.
I do think a big part of that, though, if I'm being completely honest, is like what makes this film work, though, because a lot of the action is really good when it comes to sort of like having very easily established practical goals that occur throughout the action scene that feel very like natural, like, and very, I'm trying to think of like the action flows in a way that very few movies. There's like very clear situational stakes that shift on a dime, and it almost feels like the writer wrote action scene here with this outcome because then on set they were like, okay, what's physically in this room? Oh, we got this big fucking weird table. All right, he can go under it, and the other guy's trying to shoot through it. Like, a lot of it feels like it was set up and done spontaneously in the moment, reacting to the physical. Because this film's action so much revolves around the location, the building, the physical layout of things, that you just have to wonder, like, was this stuff all designed when they got to the sets and they got to the building? The building, I think, is only used for the exterior, if I'm not mistaken. The interior is all sets, I assume. They might have shown that if they on movies that made us. I don't know.
Well, they talked about I think they got like 4 floors of the building, because they talked about when they had to. They weren't allowed to. There was a law firm, so the rest of the building was occupied.
Yeah, the building was actually was actually partially Fox's headquarters, wasn't it?
Yeah, so there was a law firm that was like, please stop shooting bullets like until after 5 p.m. Because basically they'd set up and do all these big action shots, and like there was one law firm in particular that was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we're trying to work.
Amazing.
So yeah, I think
because how do you explain that? It's one thing to say, oh, there's some construction going on the floor below us. You can explain that to a client. Imagine Nick trying to explain, hearing Bruce Willis yell, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!" and then like a machine gun fire.
Yeah, and look, we'll never know what was added when, so I think all we can do is sort of talk about the final product.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it really is. And I think also
What
it's
did you have any thoughts
amazing.
on the situational action of it all? Because I was curious to whether you felt that way too. Like the scenes all sort of when the action's happening, it's all so like flows into itself very nicely. The circumstances and his goals. No one's ever yelling, "He needs to get to this thing," because he needs to do that. You always understand what it is he's trying to achieve in an action scene through context. So it's just really interesting the way they do that, because it feels so much more natural than so many other action films. And this is particularly on my mind in the wake of the horrendous Matrix 3 Fight for Zion sequence, where it's just a lot of shooting that's aimless and people yelling what they're trying to do but not really making it clear. Like, this movie is the opposite of that. It's always clear what the hero was trying to achieve, therefore you always feel the stakes.
And I think that's again like how amazing the script is and the thinking through by accidental design, because like you never have to, they always show you, they never tell you. And what's even more amazing about that is, because a lot of films obviously do, they show don't tell, a lot of great films. What's even more incredible about that, in this film there would be an embedded excuse and reason to do the tell, which is the relationship between him and Powell down on the street. Take, for example, the scene where they're about to attack the FBI. So what he does is lets some dynamite fall down to the basement to where they are and explode, so that it stops everything in its tracks, basically. A bad version of this movie has Bruce Willis on the radio going, "They're not listening, so I guess I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this dynamite and I'm going to plunge it down." Like, that's a bad version of this movie. And it would have been so easy for them to do it. But it's just like these fucking shit-hot creators just going, "Well, no, if we see him stab the dynamite and put the computer on it and then drop it, we'll know what he's doing. So let's just have him do it." Like,
right.
I
will say that
you're right.
Funny enough, you've picked the one scene that did leave Nadia going like, "Well, wait a minute. Who is he trying to? What's he exactly trying to achieve here? Is he trying to kill the two guys with the rocket launchers? Because that is what happens, it seems." But yeah, I must admit that one did actually, funnily enough, confuse Nadia slightly, because she's seen this multiple times now, and she was just like, "Well, wait a minute, like, was the bomb intended to scare off the police? Was it intended to kill Gruber's men, to save them from, to stop them from shooting rockets at the police forces?" Like, his goal in that scene is actually one of the least clear of the movie, which is interesting because it's the one you've decided. Which I agree with you. I think it's very clear, but it wasn't for Nadia, so that maybe suggests maybe that one isn't quite as clean.
There is, in general, if we are to nitpick, and we should nitpick, but I think nitpicking doesn't mean that it's not a perfect movie. I still think it's a perfect movie, as we predicted, with some nitpicks.
Have you got your bus ticket bought, Chris?
I've got my bus ticket. Where are we going, Dan?
Nitpick corner.
Way.
Choo choo.
The building,
all aboard.
The building logistics. And what's like a janitor behind the scenes area? What's a lift shaft? What's a lift shaft that you can for some reason easily access? What's a vent? What's not a vent? How big the vents are? There's some building logistics stuff that maybe is simply just 80s buildings, and actually, I've never gone behind the scenes of a big building like that, so maybe it's fine. But I could see someone easily watching and going, "Wait, so where is he? And how's he able to do that? Because, where's he jumping to and from here?" I could see that being, and that's not necessarily, I think part of the confusion in that scene is potentially he's able to essentially seemingly open a door and look right down to the basement, and he knows they're definitely in the basement, and that reaches the basement. And so there's a general sort of, what are the logistics of this building?
Well, yeah,
and
how is they're definitely not in the basement, because those two guys are shooting rocket launchers downward into the car park. So how he knew where the bomb was going to blow to take those guys out is definitely vague.
And it could be, big ass explosion is just going to pause everything anyway. But I think there's definitely a sense of like, because also when he He goes into like the janitorial bit because he says hello to the topless women photos. And then, so he's down that big sort of shaft, but he's got to jump and there's air vents. And yeah, I think there's the building logistics, I think, could easily confuse someone.
Yeah. I think they kind of cover themselves early on with that the most of the building is still under construction, or several floors are still under construction. Because then you get these big open spaces or like vents that you can get access to, and you go, well, he's getting access to that because there should be fake walls up there that aren't up yet, or there should be grates on some of those vents that but that's a finishing touch. They've not put the grate on the vent yet because the vent's not finished, like the work isn't finished. So they definitely give themselves a wiggle room with that one line, but I think the nitpicks are still valid. The other one that's from that exact same scene, though, that you just referenced, the one with the bomb, I just want to point out this to the writers. More detonators does not make bigger boom. Just want to make this clear. He has a brick of C4 and he puts 2 detonators in it. Now, I think that's right, because I think it's like a positive and negative charge to complete a circuit which sends charge through the C4, which blows it up. And then John McClane goes, fuck it, and puts more detonators in, like that's going to make it explode more. That's not how it works. That's just not how it works.
It's a fair nitpick. Well, I don't know enough about detonators, but that sounds like a fair nitpick to me.
Yeah, C4 is where the boom is coming from. The detonator is what's sparking said boom, yes?
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that makes sense, yes? So,
yeah.
if he'd have gone, fuck it, and then, stuck another brick of C4 attached to it, or whatever, then that makes sense. Otherwise, I'm like, what? Yeah. Another one I have, and this is like, nitpicky of nitpicks. When he first goes into the building, right, there's a security guy, at the desk, who a little bit later after the scene gets shot. And I kind of think, the same way that you were sort of saying with Johnson & Johnson being blown up, and you're like, well, they were dicks. I kind of feel like this guy deserves it too. What a dick. Right. You know that there's a party going on upstairs and that it's the only thing left they're the only people left in the building. Because you say that line 30 seconds later, right?
Yeah, I said this to Jess, yeah.
John McClane comes into the building and goes, I'm here to see Holly McClane. The guy's just like, yeah, just type the name in there and it'll point you to which floor she's on. He types the name in. It shows the floor. And then he looks up at the guy and the guy's like, oh yeah, floor 30, they're the only people left in the building. Why the fuck didn't you just send him straight there then, you absolute prick? Well, I said this to Nanny, and she was just like, yeah, maybe he just wanted to play with the toys. Like, he just wanted to show him the computer system. I'm like, I'm sorry, that guy's a dick.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing how that actually holds up more in a modern context. Because I think if someone was watching this now, they'd assume that was a sign-in system, and that's why he had to do it. But actually, it's not a sign-in system. It's high technology for the day, saying where she's based. But I literally turned to Jess and was like, "Why didn't he just tell him?" Like,
yeah, if they're the only people left in the building, he doesn't need to use the fucking high-tech system. I know what they're doing. They're trying to set up the fact that the building is full of, high-tech controls and stuff, because obviously a lot of this movie is predicated on the building being very modern and full of technology that makes doors shut and lock from a distance. I understand what they're setting up in that scene. Maybe don't have the guy phrase it that way. Maybe make it a sign-in system. Not a system to tell you where they are.
But as you yourself said, you think he's a dick, but then it makes you feel less bad about him dying.
Yeah. So, what a dick!
If that's what they were looking to achieve,
just send him there.
I've thought of another amazing thing that, and this one really struck me on this watch, because things like the photo and stuff like that, and the feet and the all of that stuff I've noticed before. The one that I hadn't noticed until this viewing was because some of this stuff as well isn't even just practical; it's the symbolism, the fact that like at the beginning in the scene with Ellis, the watch symbolizes like them taking Holly away from him and her sort of life without him and all of this stuff, and how he thinks she's become a bit fancy or whatever, is then the thing that by taking it off and letting it drop saves the day. Like all the symbolism around that is just fucking amazing, and like, yeah, it's brilliant. Do you think
this movie is a movie full of insane details, like really small attention to detail stuff that you just go fucking hell, wow.
Do you think one of the things, and I in terms of like putting pins in subjects to come back to, I want to come back to the Holly character, but do you think that one of the reasons this film feels so triumphant and makes you be like, Die Hard, is because every villain gets a form of comeuppance and every hero gets their moment to shine? Powell gets to shoot the guy at the end. Algernon, is that his name? The limo
Argyle.
driver. Argyle,
Argyle.
the limo driver gets to I clearly can't pronounce his name. Gets to ram the limo into the van with the tech guy in. Holly gets to punch the reporter. The reporter gets punched. Hans and the gang die. Like, everyone gets their comeuppance. Apart from, I suppose, we don't see the tech guy arrested, but assume he got arrested. Do you think that?
And other than being yelled at by John McClane, the Dwayne, the shitty police chief guy, doesn't really get any comeuppance.
No, but he sort of gets a bit of redemption in the fact that he's like, something doesn't feel right about this. He clearly begins to lean more towards Powell and anti the FBI towards the end. Yeah. So I think he totes the line between hero and villain, because that goes back and forth. Back and forth. He sort of has an arc with that, with how he feels about the situation, I think.
It all feels so tight, though, because even just bringing up Argyle, like, in terms of your point, I 100% agree with you. I think you're right. A big part of what makes this movie triumphant is, like, everyone gets the moment to win. But again, the choice to keep Argyle throughout the movie, and I know there's a happy accident. There's a reason they had to beef up the roles of people like Argyle and Powell. Bruce Willis was still making a TV show at the time. is the sad thing, and he wasn't as free, as they originally thought. So they had to make some changes on the fly. But the choice to have Argyle in the movie served the purpose of introducing us to McClane and his situation very quickly. And it's worth noting, this movie, holy hell, like, straight into the action. The terrorists show up like 17 minutes in. Like, that's impressive. But Argyle has got so many functions in the movie. So he serves as our introduction to McClane and McClane's situation, because obviously, we need to learn about what McClane is doing there, what his situation is. And Argyle he used to be a cabbie, he's asking a bunch of questions, and we learn a bunch about it. Then Argyle gets there and is like, I'm going to wait for you, which is one, you learn a lot about Argyle. You go, oh, what a nice guy. But then he's comic relief throughout a big chunk of the movie, because like the shit going on around him and he's not noticing. My favorite being the when Powell gets the body thrown on the car and it backs up and it's being like shot at by machine guns. Then it just cuts into the limo, and out the back window you can see the car going by and the bullets flying, and he's just oblivious. So he's playing comic relief then through the middle of the movie, and then at the end of the movie he gets to play a really important part in stopping one of the villains who, theoretically, you might have who wasn't one of the physical threat villains, but was more like the tech guy, as Chris pointed out. His ending can't be being shot by Bruce Willis. He's not an aggressive character, so you need to find an ending for him. Or the fucking joy of joys, we've got Argyle sat right there in a limo, not doing anything. So Argyle can knock him out. It's genius. It's so tight, and everything pays off into something, and it just feels like nothing is wasted, and it's all so incredibly put together. And again, it's both a miracle and a work of absolute brilliance that even small details or small characters like Argyle, that in another movie would be completely forgotten, or not hang around at all, are made use of in such interesting ways. And so absolutely a big chunk of what the fuck yeah this movie is the way they use they make sure all the characters have something to do, because it means you constantly get character arcs with payoffs, or character beats with payoffs. It's constant. This movie is set up, payoff, set up, payoff, set up, payoff. And there's so many of them that by the end of the movie, it's just like, fuck yeah, that came together, that came together, that came together, yes. And both in a I'm satisfied with this narrative sort of way, but also in a yes for these characters sort of way. Goodies win, baddies lose,
Yeah, and everything, like, everyone gets, like, what they deserve. Like you say, it's really clever that the tech guy doesn't get shot violently by Bruce Willis, because he's not shot anyone violently. Like, he's an arse, he's a criminal, so he gets captured. Maybe,
Right.
again, nitpick corner, maybe we need to see him getting arrested in the background. That would be good. Because even, like... Oh, but what they also do, which is really clever, is they show us the stakes. Now, Ellis, also a dick, so you're sort of a bit like, when he gets shot because it's his own fault. But also, you kind of need someone we know to get shot to set up the stakes, to, make it clear that, there is a real danger here. And obviously, it's the same with, they use the owner of the company in the same way. Make it very clear that he actually is a nice guy. And by killing him probably within the first 25 minutes, I assume, or around that, if it's 17 minutes and the terrorists are already there, killing him quickly really does set those stakes. And everything is, just really intricate. I also think and there's this really funny bit with, like, on the movies that made us, where they talk about this. The character of Holly, especially for the time, is really well written, strong, independent, knows her stuff. And there's this great bit where the actress who played her goes, she wasn't your typical damsel in distress. And then there's a beat and she goes, well, except at the end maybe. And it cuts to, her with the gun to her face getting captured and stuff.
Yeah.
But
well, that's
like
it for the 80s, like,
But it's that's something
that was very
the
unusual.
Yeah, because the difference is that thing at the end, damsel in distress with the gun against her face, that is what happens to the character. That is not the character. Whereas in other movies at the time, the damsel in distress was the entire character that female character was given. Whereas she has independence, has strength, has kind of cunning, telling him that her name is Miss Gennaro to try and take him off the scent when it comes to John, etc. Like, all of these things... She's a really great character, and that's really rare for the time, and unfortunately still kind of rare now. I think Holly, all the characters in this film are written really well, but Holly in particular, I think, is written and performed very well.
Yeah. Oh my god, they're still banging. 1 second. Sorry. 1 sec.
Nope. He's there. Neighbour Dan at the window. Oh, he's gone outside. I assume he's not on mic now, but you think he's coming back, people?
They've all got that door open for the flat across the... I don't know if they're doing work in it or cleaning it or what, but they keep slamming the door. I'm going to go tell them to shut the fuck up in a minute and stop slamming the door, because it's really fucking...
What were the voices saying? Because it seems like there were voices there.
Done it again.
Maybe they're testing the door.
I was hoping I'm trying to catch the people doing it. They keep vanishing. Or whatever they're doing, they're going back and forth really quickly, and I keep missing them. I don't know if they're, like, cleaning or doing work in that flat, but they keep going and going, and every time they do it, they slam the door. It's really loud. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. We'll probably cut that bit out, I imagine. Or we can just have you being, like, trying to narrate it without knowing what's going on.
Well, that's because I didn't... You sort of said you were going as you were going. You didn't sort of say, right, make a point and talk over me doing
it's because
this.
I was trying to be quick to catch them, because, like, I keep missing them to say, can you stop slamming this door? So I was desperately trying to catch them. Anyway.
I assume you agree that Holly was written...
yeah, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I think this is sort of like a great trend it started to happen. We saw signs of it, Terminator, which was 95, 94, gave us a damsel in distress turned strong lead, so this was like a trend, and I think really if we trace it right back, I think it starts with Alien, right? Like, what was that, 1970, 79, 80, around that time.
Something like
so, Holly Gennaro is like a part of or one piece in a slow movement towards giving us more interesting characters, and something that sadly, Hollywood to this day hasn't 100% learned that lesson. I mean, you know, films is well. I guess if we're looking back, like it's interesting to see how it's shifted. Like you go back to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, and Kirsten Dunst exists to be captured and scream, which is a real shame. Whereas you look at the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films, and you know Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy is getting involved and helping. She helps develop the way to stop the lizard in the first Spider-Man movie. Sorry, first Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie. Spoilers. So you know, it's Holly is a really good example of Hollywood when Hollywood understands correctly that women don't have to just be damsels; they can be smart and capable.
Yeah.
And the way this movie writes her is to be the most capable person in the room. You know, she is the only one smart enough to really know what's going on, and she's brilliantly and very cleverly contrasted against Ellis, who's just a complete fucking idiot. You know, the great thing about Ellis is one of those characters that's written in a way where you sort of, you know where he's coming from, because he's sort of saying like, why are we trying to stop these guys? They want money or demands or whatever. Stopping them is only going to drive them to potentially kill us. And he's kind of right, but his approach is absolutely wrong. You know,
well, his approach is the arrogance and cockiness of a salesman, isn't it? Or you know, stereotypically.
Right, exactly. He's such a sleazy character. He's so written that, like, even though he might ultimately have a point, she stands strong behind principles, and she's very intelligent, and she's smart about how she deals with each situation. You know, the scene where she confronts Hans about like just the quality of the conditions for the hostages, and says, you know, it's either going to get messy out there, or you're going to start having to take us to the bathroom soon, or we got a pregnant lady that, you know, needs a more comfortable place to sit rather than the floor. You know, you know, that scene is a great example of that character being confident, but not to the point of foolishness, unlike Ellis. So contrasting those two against each other, in those sequences, one, tie us more to the hostages. So she's also got she's not just a really good character in her own right, she's also got a really good plot function, which she is our link to the hostages up there. You know, without that, they would just be these nameless, faceless people that are mentioned occasionally. But also, it's just a great way to make her seem like a smart and capable person on her own, and a match for McClane in a different way. Maybe, you know, Holly's probably not, you know, going down the side of a building on a hose pipe, but she's got her own way of being able to problem solve and get away out of situations. And you know, you understand that she's a match for him very quickly, and played brilliantly by Bonnie Bedelia, like Bedelia. I'll go with Bedelia. Bonnie Bedelia, who does an absolutely fantastic job in the role. My only criticism, I think, at all of how any of the Holly and John stuff is handled is, I will say that when they have their argument before it kicks off, when they first arrive at the party, the fight they have is very vague and a little generic, and I wish it was something more specific that they were fighting about, because it's just so blah. It's like, oh, they're having difficulties, they're not on the same page.
Why? I think that I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that so much, because to me it felt very real, in the sense that it felt like a couple that had been arguing about this shit for a year, and it felt actually.
Right.
You wouldn't go, well, they managed to get that feeling without feeling like they're having to give the audience a lot of information. Which
and you never do that. And you never do the dishes. I can't do the dishes. I'm catching cops. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, no one would go, you know, and they do a bit of recap. It's very clear he didn't really want her to move. It was a great opportunity.
They cover kind of what the crux of their recent sort of distances, for sure.
The pettiness feels like, because you almost, and what I love as well, what they do with McClane's character, you feel, you know, because they're getting on so well, and there's a lot of like heat and chemistry between them. And then he goes, I see not enough, you don't miss me enough to take my name, or something. And you just get this real sense of like, oh, why are you bringing that up? And he even says like afterwards, like, oh, great job, John. Like he realizes himself he was a bit of a dick. So I see what you're saying, but to me, it just felt like people that was going round in circles, and it felt a bit vague because they'd been having this argument for years.
Yeah, and actually, you've convinced me, to be honest with you, because now I think about it, I sort of go as well. Yeah, it's one of those things where the things that they're not gelling with, it doesn't. There might be multiple triggers, but those difficulties they're having are because of their personality. So it's not going to come up in a specific, tangible way at this point because it's been triggered by multiple choices and things the other character has done. They're having their disagreement is beyond petty practicalities and is coming down to their life choices, and how they approach things.
Yeah.
And you're right, actually, that stuff doesn't have a place in an argument that devolves into and you slept with your secretary or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, not that would be the reason, but do you know what I mean? Like, but then I suppose then you have the question of going like, well, if they're that at loggerheads personally, like they're actually just not gelling at all, then the ending of the movie where she's just suddenly with him because he saved the day doesn't really quite gel.
I think that comes from, because I do think that is also a valid nitpick. I think they kind of like what you were saying, where you were like, well, this line sort of explains about the building. I think that notion of, by having him after that fight go, oh, great job, John, like, you idiot, why did you bring that up? And having him later on say, she's heard me say I love you, but she's never heard me say I'm sorry, which I think is what the line is. It kind of feels like it's not so much that their problems are suddenly resolved, it's that John's realised there's some shit he just needs to get over, and this happening, this, their life being in danger, her being in danger, has made him realise that actually sometimes you've got to just say sorry and get over your shit.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that what he realizes is that, like, he was being stubborn for stubborn's sake, and that he can't just, stand there like a rock and be in the way. He needs to be able to be willing to adjust and stuff. But she never hears that. They never have that conversation. She doesn't overhear what he says on the radio to Powell. So the ending still sort of, you go, like, did they have that conversation? It might have been nice to see it. Or even...
Yeah.
show her, because everything he's saying to Powell is going over the radio, right? Presumably everyone, all the terrorists are monitoring it, right? You assume, because obviously he might give away location or information. So have her in the vicinity of Hans or someone with a radio, and have her hear that and see that her eyes are a bit glassy or something. I don't know, something to indicate she's like taking in what he's saying. That would have been perfect. That would have elevated, and it's a simple change, but it would make the ending way more satisfying for me. And again, you're right, it's a nitpick. In the end, they're together. He's learned his lesson. That why, but just that confirmation of her understanding that about him and learning that about him would be really important, not just for him, but for her as a character, because otherwise she just looks like weak-willed, that she's just like, oh, he saved the day, I'll bend to his will now, which isn't what's happening, obviously, and not what they're implying, but it's what you might take away as a message if you don't get a moment of seeing her learn that he's changed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because there is the moment before the fight where basically she says, I've missed you, and it's clear that they do still love each other, but they just keep descending into this madness because of stubbornness, etc. But that is there, but it is certainly not as clean as if she found a radio or was in the vicinity of Hans and heard that speech. Which I think out of everything we've discussed, if I was going to change one thing, I'd add that. I'd add a shot of her hearing that.
Yeah, for sure. It wouldn't take a lot, and it would probably add a lot. So yeah, I think you're right. Everything else we've discussed is like a true nitpick in the sense of, like, I don't think it changes the movie much, even if they fix that. Like, it won't change the movie much if they they take out the line where John's like, fuck it, and puts more detonators in, or if they have that guy in the opening scene actually say, oh, they're upstairs, instead of going to a computer system making it look like a dick. Like, those are genuine nitpicks in that fixing them makes very little impact on the movie. I think the closest thing I have to a criticism that I think stands, because my other one was obviously that their argument felt a bit sort of like generic and thingy, but I think you've turned me around on that. But I think the criticism that still stands is that I do think in the end it would be nice to understand why Holly's position has changed. I know why John's position has changed. We've gone on that journey. It's there's a missing piece. If you're going to set her up as so strong and very like sort of like level-headed, but also she's. I just don't see how. Like I could imagine that character, like him giving her a hug and her being like, "Well, this doesn't change anything. What are you talking about?" Like, you know what I mean? Without having known the journey he's been on, I could almost see that character rebuffing him at the end rather than embracing him.
Yeah, but she did nearly die. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It probably we've established she loves him and misses him, and then she nearly dies. I don't think it's quite beyond the realm that she's gone, oh, give me a hug.
Yeah, but they don't leave. They leave
in
in an embrace, though. They leave together. Like it's they're together. Like that's the implication of the end of the movie. It's not just that they've had a hug. If it was just that, then you go, oh yeah, they've just gotten out of a scary situation and they know each other and obviously they're fond of each other. But if they come out together, he's got his arm around her, they get into the limo together, they're going away together. Like that's them going, because obviously this movie is not made with a sequel in mind, because it was made, pre the modern era of everything needing to be a franchise. So that was the ending. That was going to be the happily ever after. That's the intention anyway. I just feel like what I'm saying is for that would absolutely elevate the movie for me.
Yeah, what I'm saying is agree, more context would elevate it, make it cleaner, but I think it does still work as it is because we know she does love him and they've gone through this horrific ordeal.
Yeah, they do enough to just about get away with it, but I think it could be a lot better. I think that's a fair summary. I want to talk quickly about the... Oh no, well, you were going to move us on to something, sorry.
No, it's all right, you go.
I just wanted to ask you about the choice to have them not be terrorists but bank robbers. I think that was really clever, and also giving Hans that amazing that line where he's pretending to be a terrorist and he's naming all of his brothers in arms he wants different governments in the world to release. he names a group called like Asian Dawn, who have got some people incarcerated somewhere, and the Carl character looks at him and mouths like, Asian Dawn, and he like pulls the radio away from his mouth and goes, I read about them in Time magazine. It's a brilliant joke, number one, but number two, I think that's such a clever notion. The notion that these guys they're just the simplest thing ever. They're just here to rob a bank, essentially. It's not a bank, but like to rob a bunch of money, I should say. But they know that in the climate, they can make it look like a terrorist incident. And I think that's... genius, and makes them much more. It almost makes them more interesting as criminals.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and again, it's happy accidents. Basically, the director was like, I don't want to make another terrorist movie. Make them robbers. It's more fun, which is like amazing that it then becomes this genius thing. Yeah. And even the fact that, because their escape plan is genius as well, make it look like they've all been blown up, and actually they're never on the roof, and then by the time they've realised they've gone. Like, I think it's a really smart decision, and again it links to this idea of, because one thing that struck me watching it, and it links perfectly to that point, is there's so many archetypes and stereotypes in this film, but the writing is so sharp and the performances are so great that you just get away with it. Yep. You fucking hate that reporter. You want to smack him. So when he's smacked, you love it. And then, like, on paper, hearing it described, Hans feels like one of the most kind of obvious villains possible. He's a bank robber that's just, you know what I mean? That's like you say, that's the sum of it. But it's written and played so beautifully that he becomes one of the most characteristic and best. It wouldn't surprise me to see Hans Gruber on list of like best villains of all time. There's not the complex backstory like there is for He Who Must Not Be Named in Harry Potter. There's not the clear goal, and you kind of understand their logic. He Who Must
Not Be Named instead of Voldemort.
Yeah, man. I can't say Voldemort. There's not the clear sense of don't agree but can understand where he's coming from that you get with Thanos. Like literally, he's a bank robber. But
but I think that's actually has a weird reverse effect because they're abusing the notion of a moral villain, which is this idea of a villain that has an ideology that, from their perspective, is morally correct, whether right or wrong. Often, good villains are the ones that you sort of go, I don't agree with what they're doing, but like I totally understand where they're coming from. So like Killmonger in like Black Panther is a really good recent example of this. That character is not incorrect. He's going about it the wrong way, but his point is valid. The idea of almost making Hans more despicable by making him go, I'm going to laugh in the face of the people with ideologies. Ideologies? No, I just want to make money. Like, that almost makes him more villainous. It's like they've taken advantage of the idea of villains with more backstory and purpose and reasoning, and they've flipped it on its head. Again, I suspect, as we've just discovered, kind of almost by accident, and created a villain that's almost more detestable because he doesn't even believe in any of it. He doesn't have an ideology. He's just a selfish dude. That's very weirdly compelling.
That's so hard to get right. Obviously, The Dark Knight did it with some men just want to watch the world burn. But I can't think of many examples where literally just a villain for the sake of being a villain actually works. And that you get away with it. There's way more examples of that not working than working. And I think again, it's a great job on behalf of the script, and obviously, Alan Rickman's incredible performance because he plays it so theatrically, and it was his first film, and I think getting a theatre actor to play the part, I think really benefits because there's because in theatre villains are theatrical, and I think that. Yeah, there's just something about the performance that just really works.
So before I brought that up, you were there was something you wanted to talk about as well, and I derailed.
Well, I didn't. One thing I wanted to rewatch before this, but didn't, is the Screen Junkies video on this exact topic. It would be remiss, Dan, especially given the nature of this episode being a Christmas special, it would be remiss not to get into the debate a little bit.
That was my last thing to talk about before we got through the other notes. Is it a Christmas movie or not?
Well, do you have anything before that point then?
I want to talk about like the iconography of this movie and how it's become the most iconic thing ever. Like it's so much of it. It's like every 4 or 5 minutes something happens in this movie that's like completely iconic now. Whether it's ho ho ho, now I have a machine gun, or now I have a machine gun, ho ho, or yippee ki yay motherfucker, welcome to the party, pal.
Welcome to the party, pal. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, come down to the coast. We'll have a few laughs. That whole thing, like all of that. That was the best Bruce Willis impression you're ever going to get out of me. So that's the standard we're at. All of that stuff, and then the visuals of like him leaping off the building with the water hose tied around him. Just the image of Bruce Willis in this movie in the vest that's progressively dirtier as it goes. No shit, lady. You think I'm trying to order a pizza? Like all of that. Yeah. Like, it's which is one of my favorite lines in the whole movie. Is it accident? Is it just that the movie is so good? Lots of moments from it become iconic. Can you design iconography? Like how much of that is intent, and how much of it is just it's a good movie, so lots of it is remembered? Because I wonder about that. Because there are plenty of movies that I think are absolutely fucking wonderful, and lots of people do, but they're not iconic. Like they don't have multiple moments that are absolutely iconic, top to bottom. Do you know what I mean? Like Groundhog Day is widely accepted as being a great movie. It's on a lot of top 10 lists. People love it. There's so few things from that are like iconic, though.
Yeah, certainly compared to this and something like Back to the Future, which also 88 miles per hour where we're going, we don't need roads. Like,
right. Exactly.
That sort of
so
stuff.
What's the difference between a movie that becomes when lots of moments from it become iconic, and a movie that's absolutely widely acknowledged as being great, perfect, brilliant, but just doesn't quite hit in that way. I don't understand what the difference is.
Maybe it's like, and I don't know, this is just off the top of my head, so I may change my mind on this, but maybe it's like, it's harder for like a big blockbuster movies. Like, Back to the Future and Die Hard are more blockbuster movies than Groundhog Day. Not just in performance, but in, set pieces, action, all of that sort of stuff. Adventure, Groundhog Day is essentially a character piece. Maybe blockbuster movies, it takes more for them to become remembered and loved, because sometimes they can just be dismissed, especially nowadays where there's so many bad blockbuster movies. So when one is amazing, blockbuster movies are inherently more accessible as well. So when one lands, like, it really fucking lands in public consciousness. And I think, repeatability as well. Like, it's kind of like what we were talking about with It's a Wonderful Life. Die Hard's got, however 30 odd years of people, 33 whatever years of people rewatching, remembering, so those things sort of just slowly over that time start to creep into public conscious, maybe. You definitely can't plan for it, though. You absolutely can't plan for it.
Yeah, you can't capture that in a bottle, can you?
No. But you are right, there is so many. Like, you do just watch it, and like, I would love to witness someone that hadn't, like I had briefly with my very specific McFly song last week of like, oh, that's where that comes from. Somebody watching Die Hard with somebody that had never seen it, it must be like, oh, fuck, right, okay, well, welcome to the part. That's where, okay, fine. Oh, yippee-ki-yay, yep, heard that. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so another couple of... I think that's exactly how I feel about it. I think you're right. It's like you can't capture that in a bottle, so but it's just incredible how much of it is that. And I also would enjoy seeing somebody watch through this and realise how much of this stuff is seeped into popular culture. I think that image of him in the vent with the lighter is also another one. Like, that image alone, like, it feels like, because obviously there was that whole meme a few years ago. People made it as a Christmas decoration, all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So a couple of other things I want to talk about, if that's okay, before we get into the question of is it a Christmas movie. I'm going to blast through these very quickly. Just some stray observations with Dan. How times have changed. Gun on the plane and smoking in an airport. I don't care if you're a cop or not. You ain't taking a gun on a plane. Not loose in a fucking holster inside of your fucking thing. Anyway, that's for sure. So yeah, let's put that on. It strikes me that this may have been the role Bruce Willis was born to play, an asshole. People didn't know it at the time. He was kind of known as a nice guy because he'd done a lot of sitcoms, but recent years have pretty much shown Bruce Willis to be quite quite not as dissimilar from his character as you may think.
Well, he was known. Apparently, people laughed when they saw the trailer because he was basically
that's in the trivia. Yeah, people did. They laughed because he was kind of known as the comedy guy, for sure. Another little nitpick, Chris, that I forgot to mention. This was all planned very meticulously. I think the movie shows that from the terrorist side, from Hans Gruber's side, right? All these details, down to knowing the FBI would cut off the power. Yet when they first get in and get all the hostages together, they don't know what the boss looks like. The guy owns this company. You couldn't have looked up a picture? You didn't bother to just, like, crack open a company directory? I know you don't have necessarily, like, full internet access, but, it's a public company. He's very rich. There'll be pictures of him out there. You couldn't...
Well, they found a picture of Hans.
Couldn't look him up before you showed up?
The news found a picture of Hans, so yeah. Also, on that, what I love is I'd quite like to see the 20-minute version of this movie because presumably, if the boss had given them the codes, then this movie would be over within half an hour.
Yeah, if John McCain had been upstairs with the rest of the guests when they'd come in, and he'd just given them the codes, this movie would have been called Die, and it would have been just all robbery of the hostages getting rounded up, Hans going off, getting into the safe, loading it into the back of that the ambulance, and then all the hostages going to the roof and then being blown up.
Yeah, definitely.
I also made the note of Ellis is the fucking worst.
Yeah, he's a prick.
He's the worst. I also wrote that fucking reporter. And then the final thing before we get on to...
sorry to just to expand on that. I have to say, again, another example of a worse movie not doing something obvious. There's no indication that Ellis particularly fancies Holly, or like is trying to seduce her and she said no, and he's jealous of John. Do you know what I mean? Like he's a prick, but like the worst version of this movie has stuff like that in it.
Doesn't he do that in the opening scene, though? Doesn't he come onto her, like, straight away, like, invite her for dinner or something? Like, isn't that one of the first things Ellis does?
That's true. Yeah, all right. Yeah, fair point. Forget that, then. Fuck you, Dan. No, joking.
I really enjoy, and the last note before we get onto the big question and the triv, the American accent sequence. I know we've already talked about that it kind of happened as an accident, but the tension of that sequence and the way it plays out and the interplay between those two actors is fucking glorious. Everything about it. For those who don't remember, Hans, who's only been talking to John over the radio for the whole movie, he's the leader of things, goes upstairs to check on something to do with his plan. I'm not going to get into the details, and he comes across McClane. There's this weird pause, and then he starts doing an American accent and being like, "Oh, you're one of them. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot me." And he pretends to be a hostage that got away, and these two get to exchange dialogue and a couple of scenes before it becomes very obvious that John has figured him out. He tries to shoot John, but the gun John gave him doesn't have any bullets in it, and it leads to one of the best, another iconic thing. "What do you think? I'm stupid, Hans?" You know, he takes the gun off him just like really casually, like he did no bullets. You know, it's really well done. Yeah, but I just wanted to give that sequence credit because again, especially knowing it kind of came out of just like it being on the fly, amazing, like wonderful. I think that's absolutely solid. So Chris. Unless you have anything to add on any of those things that I've scattered through on my last of my notes. Christmas film or not a Christmas film?
Yep. Sorry.
Timing.
Apologies for that massive sneeze. I think it absolutely is a Christmas film, Dan. You?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100% agree. I'll be curious to know what your sort of logic is, just because there are multiple debates and reasons people cite for each side of this debate. I'm curious as to why you feel so confident it's a Christmas movie. What about it to you screams Christmas movie?
So it's partly that video, which I've just had on with subtitles in the background. I've not finished watching it. But there's a lot of stats to back up that it is a video, that it is a Christmas movie, sorry. Mm-hmm. So, first of all, they basically analysed the numbers and then compared to other films. So, Die Hard has 19 Christmas trees in it, compared to Home Alone 7's and Miracle on 34th Street's 1. Christmas decorations, 15. Christmas decorations, 29 in Home Alone, but more than Miracle with 3. Christmas carols, 12 versus Home Alone 7 and Miracle's 4. Use of the word Christmas, 13 compared to Home Alone 7, Miracle 8. Other Christmas references, 4 compared to Home Alone's 10 and Thingamajig 4. Also, I think the public will tell you, so there's another stat from that same video, Die Hard's fandom page views go up 400% between November and December, which would suggest the viewing public very much feel it is a Christmas movie. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with the argument that, there's a lot of violence, so does that inherently mean, that's not very Christmassy? Well, it just means it's a violent Christmas film, and I think that is made a lot worse in other movies and stuff like that, since, Bad Santa and all of that sort of stuff. You wouldn't say that's not a Christmas movie. I think it's statistical. I think it's a feeling, Dan. I think, it's set in December. There's Christmas themes throughout. The numbers don't lie. It's a Christmas movie, but I feel like you've got a like one sentence point. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you've set that up for you have a very clear, defined answer yourself. So, What for you, Dan, makes it a Christmas movie?
I wish I did. Now you've said that, because now not having that is going to make me seem like a fucking
sorry.
idiot. No,
it's just the way you were like. It's just the way you were.
I do have a thought about this, because I've had this debate, but I was curious as to what your thoughts were first, in case you had anything sort of that could either add to it, or that would track me. I agree with you. Basically, it's a Christmas movie. It's absolutely a Christmas movie by almost every metric, because to me, genre isn't really isn't often up for debate. A lot of people go, and I've had someone say this to me, because someone at my work debates this with me and says it doesn't feel Christmassy, to which I would respond, I feel Christmassy when I watch it. So feeling on genre is really actually almost irrelevant. It's set at Christmas, it takes place at a Christmas party, it ends on Christmas Day, it ends with the song Let It Snow on the credits. It has lines in it like, ho ho ho, now I have a machine gun, ho ho ho, the Christmas hat, the lights, the whole movie is laced with Christmas stuff. But the other argument I had with that person, or the other point I had, was, if you see a comedy that doesn't make you laugh, you personally, you wouldn't go, well, it's not a comedy then.
Yeah.
If the movie still, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, even if you don't personally find a comedy amusing, you'd still acknowledge its genre as a hard fact. Just because Die Hard doesn't make you, Evan, from my place of work, feel very Christmassy, doesn't mean it's not a Christmas movie. For that exact
because I think someone could watch. It doesn't have Home Alone, to some probably feels more Christmassy purely because of the warm-hearted family all together overtness of the ending. Die Hard's genre dictates that the ending can't be overt as that. And let's be honest, for its genre, it is pretty overt. Like the couple sit happily in the back of a car and kiss while Let It Snow plays. That's pretty overt for an action film. But like, just because the genre dictates that, it's not going to be as sort of family orientated as the ending of Home Alone. Actually, if you look at Home Alone, a lot of that is violent. A lot of that is, you know what I mean? There's nothing Christmassy about nearly killing people.
Clocked around the head with a paint can. Or a brick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think, the numbers don't lie. And by the way, that video is something like Die Hard Christmas by the Numbers or something, to give it reference, because obviously it formed the basis of a lot of my... hold on, let me get it up exactly. It formed the basis of a lot of my arguments. So by the numbers, science proves Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It's only 6 minutes long. I'd recommend watching it. Because then they compare it, they deduct it points for showing things like cigarettes and stuff. But I don't think you need to, because like I say, Bad Santa has a lot of that shit in, and people would still say it was a Christmas movie. And also a lot of it is like, I know people don't like it, but a lot of it is what the public are saying. And clearly people feel it's a Christmas movie. And I love also some arguments are like, Iron Man 3 isn't a Christmas movie, even though it's set at Christmas. To be honest with you, if someone was to say to me Iron Man 3 was a Christmas movie, I wouldn't disagree. I'd be like, yeah, fair enough. I bet if you said to most people, pick a Marvel movie to watch at Christmas, obviously Hawkeye's coming, Hawkeye will be the answer in the future, but I'd watch Iron Man 3. Like, it feels fairly Christmassy to me. Like, yeah, so...
Yeah.
If Iron Man 3... If Iron Man 3... I'm going to say this now, Dan. I'm gonna say this and be bold. If Iron Man 3 had been released at Christmas, people would consider it a Christmas movie. Yeah.
I don't remember there being Christmas at all in Iron Man 3, so I feel very dumb in this conversation. But yeah,
it's a shame. It's a shame. Black movies, there's Christmas, Christmas trees and shit littered throughout. But like, if because then people would, as you said, you can't control the nostalgia. If some people, because also Die Hard is accessible all year round. You could watch Die Hard at any point in the year in a way that perhaps Jingle All the Way or the Santa Claus would feel a bit weird watching it in the summer.
You could to a certain degree, but I still think you'd go, God, it's very Christmassy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
I think Die Hard has a lot more Christmas in it than people remember until they sit and watch it. I think, you remember all the, him running around in a vest shooting things, it's all very grey and there's explosions everywhere. But actually, you watch the movie, there's a surprising amount of references to music from lights and visuals that reference Christmas. It's surprising, actually, how much of it is Christmas. I mean, the whole thing starts at a Christmas party, so...
Yeah, no, that's fair. But I think... here you go. So Iron Man 3, on setting the film around Christmas, Black said, I think there's a sense of if you're doing something on an interesting scale that involves an entire universe of characters, one way to unite them is to have them all undergo a common experience. There's something at Christmas that unites everybody and already sets a stage within the stage that wherever you are, you're experiencing this world together. That presumably is his answer for why he sets most of his films at Christmas. But I think, if people had that nostalgia, and I think it does, maybe that's, like you say, you feel Christmassy when watching it, because partly because you watch it every year at Christmas.
Yes.
Same as us. So, but so many people, that wouldn't be a valid argument. We couldn't sit here and go, well, we watch it at Christmas, so it feels like a Christmas movie. The reason that makes that a valid argument is we are not alone. Like, so many people do that, as proven by the 400% increase in views on the fandom page at Christmas. That, it's definitely, the people have spoken. It's a Christmas movie.
Agreed. Right, shall we give you some trivia?
Let's triv it up!
I don't know why I've started saying that every week, but apparently that's the thing I do now.
Yeah, same with Triv It Up.
I'm going to give you some trivia. Right. Let's briefly talk about this. So a lot of people don't realise this, but Die Hard's based on a novel it's called Nothing Lasts Forever by Roderick Thorpe. I mean, that is an author name if I've ever heard one. If someone says to me, Roderick Thorpe, what does he do as a job? I'm like, that is a writer through and through. Roderick Thorpe. I don't know why. Anyway, Clint Eastwood actually owned the rights to the novel and was going to star in the film in the 80s. During that time, there was several attempts at adapting the novel, including Eastwood, Bronson, Burt Reynolds, Paul Newman. These were all people that were considered. At one point, Eastwood almost considered directing it also. At the end, John McTiernan sort of was able to take it down from a script. I think so. There were two writers on this movie, this version of the movie, the one we actually got. Let's have a quick look. I forget their names off the top of my head, but they're in here somewhere, Chris, in my notes. Jeb Stewart and Stephen E. De Souza. And I feel like, from what I can tell, Stephen E. De Souza wrote the original draft, and it was Jeb Stewart that worked on it as it went. Have I got it the right way around?
I think so, yeah. I can't remember names, but I think you're right.
But the funny thing about all this, which is that the book Nothing Lasts Forever originally served as a basis for a movie and film in like the late 60s with Frank Sinatra, because he'd done... so that book is a sequel to a book called The Detective, I think.
Yeah,
so strictly speaking, they had to offer the sequel based on an old contract to Frank Sinatra first.
Yeah, so the Detective was released, adapted into a film with Frank Sinatra, big success. Frank Sinatra went to he got his people, whatever, went to the author and said, you need to write a sequel. The author went, all right, then I'll write another book. Didn't really make it a sequel to The Detective and took years writing it, which meant by the time it kind of looped back round, Sinatra was like, nah, I'm too old to be running around fighting terrorists or whatever.
Yeah. Although, looking at it here, the book, to be fair, isn't as crazy different to the film as I thought. So it was a much older Leland. The character was called Joe Leland. And he was visiting his daughter... Steffi Leland Gennaro, who worked for a Claxon Oil Company. Takagi was the VP of sales, although he was called Rivers. But Harry Ellis, Al Powell, Dwayne Robinson were all exactly the same. The FBI don't get involved. Hans Gruber was originally Anton Little Tony Gruber, and Hans was the name of Carl's brother. The purpose of the terrorist takeover was to allow West German radical group to undercover illegal arms shipment Claxon was making to a Chilean dictatorship. But so that part's different. But the idea of them being in that building and locking it down for those reasons, like, it's all very similar. And in the end scene, which is at sort of Christmas morning, Anton Gruber falls out the window and catches his finger on Steffi Gennaro's watch. But in this case,
I believe she dies. I believe.
Well,
the daughter
yeah. So in the
dies.
original book, he pulls her out the window, and they both die. That's obviously changed here. But like hearing that, I was like, wow, there is actually a lot of this book in this movie. Like, I always assumed that by the time it reached this, because it went through so many, functions from the 60s as a sequel to The Detective through to, Bruce Willis putting on the vest, like, that I always assumed that by the time it got to being Die Hard, it was nothing of the sort. You know what I mean? It was just like a completely different thing that existed.
Yeah, I think...
But that's all quite surprisingly similar.
Yeah, I think the beats are there, and then, so the beats are the same. The first writer added because he had a fight with his wife, and as he was driving...
Oh, that's my very next piece of trivia.
Sorry.
Jeb Stewart was having difficulty writing the screenplay until he had a near-death experience while driving to Los Angeles after a fight with his wife. He was driving behind a truck carrying refrigerators. One of the fridge boxes fell out of the truck. Lucky for him, the box was empty, but he realised that if he died, he wouldn't have been able to apologise to his wife, and this inspired him to give clearer motivations to John McClane and Holly's characters. They wanted to reunite with each other after having a fight. So it looks like then, based on that piece of trivia, that it was Jeb Stewart wrote the first draft, and then the guy that helped John McTiernan, the director, add comedy and worked on it while it was shooting was Stephen E. De Souza.
So I think the book...
So I had it the wrong way around earlier.
The book created the general kind of structure and the big sort of beats.
Mm-hmm.
The first guy added the heart and the link to the wife and changed the bits that are changed. And then the third guy
Stephen E.
added the comedy, although that probably is dumbing down what he did a little bit, considering they only had 35 pages when starting, so he must have written or rewritten an awful lot of it.
Well, not
he
just
was
that,
brought on to add the comedy.
He was also responsible. So because Bruce Willis was kind of like exhausted from his schedule, because he was also shooting Moonlighting at the time, he did a sort of Michael J. Fox on this movie where he was doing a TV show and the movie. It forced De Souza to beef up the roles of all the other characters. He wasn't just adding comedy. He was making Al Powell, Ellis, and Argyle get a lot more screen time. And that was all happening as filming was beginning. So yeah, he did clearly contribute a huge amount to the final script. I think you're right. I think Roderick Thorpe, obviously novel by, was the general narrative thrust of the film. Jeb Stewart does the initial draft, gives it a bit of heart, and then Stephen E. De Souza is the one who readjusts it to have more comedy and give all the other characters presumably stuff to do, which is probably why so many of the characters in this movie have setups and payoffs, sort of mini arcs of their own. But it all came together, despite it feeling quite muddled and confused. It all came together really well, and it's amazing how good this film is, considering that's its backstory. To give more details of that, originally McTiernan actually turned the script down multiple times. He felt the script he'd been given was a nasty piece of work, and actually, that's the reason when he finally took it on, he brought on De Souza to give it the lighter edge. In the original novel and the first version of the script, so presumably the Jeb Stewart version of the script, it took place across 3 days. But when McTiernan came on to the project, he was sort of inspired to have it take place over a single night by Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, which I guess he'd either just read or was just very familiar with. Very strange, but I think ultimately actually a smart choice, to be honest.
Yeah, oh yeah, I don't disagree with the choice, but it's just like, yeah, just such a large. Do you know what I mean? That's like, it's just, I can't imagine anyone going. Yeah, so I was just thinking about Hamlet, and I was like, yeah, let's have a father-son. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to find, because I assume that's that's the sort of trivia that smacks of he said something in an interview or on a commentary once to that effect, and it's become trivia because it feels like he's sort of, post release gone, oh yeah, that was my idea, I was kind of inspired by. I tried to find the exact quote to find how he phrased it, because it is a bit phrased weird there. He just gone and seen a great production of Twelfth Night. Went, I shall fix Die Hard by making it one day. It feels very 1-to-1, and I don't think it was probably that simple. But yeah, so we can talk briefly about alternate casting as always. Several people: Richard Gere, Sylvester Stallone, Harrison Ford, Mel Gibson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Robert De Niro, Don Johnson, Richard Dean Anderson, Michael Madsen, were all considered. But the problem was McTiernan had just worked with Schwarzenegger on Predator, and while Schwarzenegger was briefly considered for the role, McTiernan kind of felt that McClane needed to be more of an average guy. Who didn't really want to be in the situation, but was kind of had to become the hero because of his circumstances. Wasn't just naturally a hero when he stepped into the situation, and that is actually what led them to, again, presumably McTiernan and De Souza bringing more to the script, this notion of John McClane being more of an everyman, and that's what led them ultimately to Bruce Willis, who at the time was a sitcom actor and musician, sort of singer. The Return of the Bruno, Chris. Look it up. It's horrendous. And very cheesy. So yeah, that's how they ended up there. And I think Bruce is obviously the right choice. There are some interesting names in that list, but I don't want to see any of those. Normally I go, oh, that would have been interesting.
No.
But I don't think the Arnold Schwarzenegger version doesn't interest me. The Mel Gibson version doesn't interest me. Stallone, Gere... De Niro,
all of those names are so...
Maybe I'd see the De Niro version.
I'd maybe see the De Niro version, but I think the problem is all of those names are so, in themselves, for either good reasons or bad, in the case of some, like, iconic, that you kind of... The reason I think you go... The reason we usually go, take me to the, Rick and Morty world where that's a thing, I want to see that. But... That's because it's essentially us going, God, I wonder what that looks like. We pretty much know what all of those names in Die Hard looks like. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to see the Schwarzenegger does John McClane because I know
we know what that is. And it's worse.
Yeah, completely.
And not even in an entertaining way, in a really predictable, boring way. Yeah, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. Another interesting alternate casting, there's not many other alternate castings for Hans Gruber. It seems they settled on Rickman pretty quickly. But they did think about Sam Neill, and I must admit, that is interesting. I love Alan Rickman in this movie. One of his best performances. I think he's fucking staggeringly good in this film. And he really gives it his all, even though it feels like... he wasn't too sure. So he nearly passed on the role because he didn't want to. He wanted to be very careful about choosing his very first film role. He'd done a lot of TV and stage work, and he was an actor. He just arrived in Hollywood and was basically 2 days in when they read this script and was appalled at the idea of having his first role being a villain in an action movie. So to a degree, he could have easily phoned this in because he wasn't sure about doing it. I think he was concerned about being typecast as well. And unfortunately, I suppose in the end, he was kind of right, because for many years he was mostly offered to play villains. He got kind of typecast that way. So he wasn't wrong to suspect that might happen. But considering that's the report on how he felt about the script when he first read it, he does not... None of that shows in his performance. That man gives like 110% to every moment in this movie.
Yeah, completely. It's stunning. It's one of the best villainous performances. It's iconic for a reason.
Agreed. So some alternate casting for Holly, Gennaro McClane. There's some good names in here. I like who we got. But I would have probably seen most of these versions because I like a lot of these actresses. Linda Hamilton from the Terminator franchise. We know she can play like a sort of strong female role. Gina Davis, who we've now seen, who's now come up on this podcast multiple times. She was obviously one of the leads in Quick Change, but also Beetlejuice. She would have been great in this role. Michelle Pfeiffer was considered. Jamie Lee Curtis was considered. Carrie Fisher was considered. Kirstie Alley was considered, and Kelly McGillis. I'm still glad that we got the version we got, but I definitely think, as good as Bonnie Bedelia is in this movie, I think there's a good chance that any of those actresses could have brought, maybe not something similar, but could have handled the role quite well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's a fair comment.
Because I feel like
Bruce
Willis
Willis
brings something really specific to John McClane you're not getting from any of those other actors. Whereas I feel like the other actresses on the in the lineup were more better suited to the role that we got. Does that make sense? So it feels like with McClane, they were like, we need action star, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, like all the predictable action star names of the day. But what they were doing with that was actually something quite different and quite interesting because they went for this kind of like everyman version of the character. So you take Bruce Willis out of this, the character doesn't really work, right? But with the Holly character, it's clear that they knew early on what they wanted. This character that's very sharp and strong and like capable, and they therefore in the alternate castings have a lot of actresses I know could do that really well. So, I like the way it played out, but I think any of those actresses would have been able to do this well, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Because the alternates were much more suited to what they ended up doing. The trivia here says, and I put this one in verbatim, because I don't necessarily trust the way this is phrased. This is another one that I feel like has come from an interview, and I've got questions about, but the character of John McClane had not been fully realised until halfway through production, when Bruce Willis and John McTiernan decided he was a man who did not like himself very much, but was just doing the best he could in a bad situation.
I
have questions.
I feel like it's way too consistent for that to be true.
Exactly. So the reason I included it is because this, a lot of this trivia is really just supporting the point that much of this was done on the fly. The script was being changed as they were going, all that stuff. And that idea that they kind of figured out the character a bit better halfway through shooting does make a certain amount of sense, I guess. But also, what did they shoot first? Just the action scenes? It's very strange, the idea that they would only work that out halfway through and that it would still feel as consistent as it does.
Yeah. Completely.
But it's also possible. It's also possible based on the trivia later where in fact it might be here. I think Bruce Willis got... Oh, no, it wasn't that he was injured. Yes, the trivia we've already done. That Bruce Willis was doing his other shoot at the time. So, maybe they just didn't have him for a lot of the early portions of the shoot. I don't know. It's unclear. Really unclear.
Maybe, but then that makes it more redundant. Do you know what I mean? We didn't properly define a character we didn't really start working with till later. I think
it makes the trivia not even a trivia then at that point. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I put it in there because it sort of backs up the point that certain chunks of this movie were sort of done on the fly, but I do question that one. Another scene that was reportedly improvised, as several of the scenes reportedly were, was obviously the McClane hands scene. Several moments in that were sort of like they didn't do much rehearsal. They very much left it loose so that they could have the two bounce off each other with a vague direction for the scene. It's obviously it's clear the writers were on set, so I don't know if improvise maybe even is the right word for what they did, but it does definitely seem like the whole sequence was made on the fly. The scene it also led to the way the scene happened on the fly had the moment where they came up with they talked about the barefoot thing, which we haven't even talked about yet. And apparently because of they got that scene in, that allowed them to add the shoot the glass moment later on. I I've lost track of what even this is anymore as trivia. This is a very confusingly written piece of trivia.
Well, but we haven't talked about the genius of the barefoot thing, which is again something that's really interwoven into the movie and proves really relevant. You do kind of think it gets to a point where, like, you've killed enough bad guys to probably check more than the first pair of shoes, but then again, maybe he does that off screen. But yeah, it's a fantastic idea, and just again, you just really, what a clever idea, because the movie could exist without that, but just makes you wince and feel his pain and feel the hardship he's going through that bit more because he's barefoot. So it's very clever.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I'll blast through the last of these because I'm realising we're approaching the 2-hour mark, and that is too long. Very quickly, so there's a bunch more of these. So the film's ending had not been finalised when the filming began. One result is that the truck depicted as transporting the terrorists to the building was too small to house an ambulance that was later revealed to be inside it. So they had to retrofit that, and that's why it's such a weird-looking ambulance. I think it's just a really small van painted like an ambulance rather than an actual one, because a real one wouldn't fit in it. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that from the fact that, and that again all leans into this notion of this movie was very much created on the fly. So it'd been often said that Bruce Willis's lines during the scene where he pulls the glass out of his feet were ad-libbed, and it was said that upon learning this, Terry Gilliam cast Willis as the lead in 12 Monkeys. However, when comparing the original script, it appears that Willis only veered slightly from what was originally written in that particular scene. So the myth around him ad-libbing most of that scene is exaggerated, it seems. So Terry Gilliam shouldn't have hired Bruce Willis for 12 Monkeys, is what I'm saying.
That's what that triv is. Terry Gilligan shouldn't have hired Bruce.
Correct. He did it. He hired him based on a lie, Chris. 12 Monkeys.
You
will
like
be
12
on
Monkeys,
this podcast
don't you?
at some point. I love that movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, the end result was fine, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I love that fucking movie. It's one of my favourites. That's an absolute masterpiece. Bruce Willis was mainly known for playing comedic roles on Moonlighting at the time, so when the first trailers for Die Hard appeared in cinemas presenting him as an action hero, audiences did indeed laugh, thinking it must be a comedy, and for a brief time, they even removed Willis's face from the posters to prevent expectations of it being a comedy, hence the use of the image of Nakatomi Plaza sort of in the poster. Once the film came out and started to build a positive response, they started issuing posters with Willis's face added back in. But yeah, that's an interesting situation they were in.
Definitely.
Speaking of that building, as I mentioned, it's actually the headquarters of 20th Century Fox and several other companies. The company actually had to charge themselves rent for using the building. Such a weird circumstance. I think I'm assuming there was some legal reason they had to do that rather than just let themselves use it. But it's kind of hilarious to imagine just a lawyer in a room signing a contract and then going around to the other side of the table and signing the contract again. We agree for you to use us for our offices for your movie motion picture. And he goes around to the other side. He's like, "Oh, thank you, very good. I agree to these terms also." They went to the trouble of sending themselves the money,
I really hope that's how. Well, like I say, in my head, that's what happened now.
Yeah, absolutely. The costume department apparently had 17 undershirts in various stages of degradation on hand for Bruce Willis. I love that that's trivia. I just love that that's trivia.
But that is trivia. Do you know what I mean? That is more justified in this section than some stuff has been in the past.
Yeah, 100%.
That's great trivia.
The line "Hans, Bubby" was ad-libbed, which is why Alan Rickman's quizzical reaction feels so genuine.
Well, have you got another piece of trivia about Rickman's genuine reactions?
Yes, I have.
I don't want to spoil it.
It's coming.
Cool.
No,
But Hans Bubby is an excellent line.
Yeah, because he leaves just the right amount of awkward pause. Hans, Bubby. It's so good. It's really well done. That guy does a great job. The scene where John McClane falls down the shaft was actually a mistake by the stuntman. The stuntman was supposed to grab the very first vent on the other side. That was what was planned. But he slipped and continued to fall. The shot was used anyway, and they edited it together with one where you can see McClane grabbing the next vent down under that because they thought it gave it like like a genuine, like he made a mistake, but then he sort of corrects it, sort of thing, which I think does give the scene a lot of tension. So,
Yeah.
that trivia is in here twice for some reason. Why not? Only a couple of the actors who played German terrorists were actually German, and only one or two could actually speak German as well, and it was broken at that. The actors were cast mainly for their menacing appearances rather than their nationality. 9 of the 12 were over 6 feet tall. That's fair.
One of them, I'll send you the screenshot after, but one of them, Dan, really looks like Neil Morrissey.
Is that right?
British.
That's so funny.
I'll send you. I was going to prepare it. I'll see if I can prepare it now quickly.
Yeah. I'll carry on with the true while you search.
Yeah.
Ironically, with that in mind, Bruce Willis sneered at the idea of being cast as the all-American hero by the in this movie by like German terrorists, because actually he's more German than most of the people playing the villains. Alan Rickman being English. Alexander Godunov was Russian. Bruce Willis himself was actually born in West Germany in 1955 to an American father and German mother. So Bruce Willis is the most German member of the cast. Or certainly one of, anyway. Obviously, I don't have the backgrounds of the entire cast here, but yeah. The police dispatcher tells Sergeant Powell to investigate Nakatomi building. He tells him it's a code 2. If you look this up, it's actually an urgent incident where sirens are not to be used, is what code 2 stands for. So, and that's what he does. He approaches without his sirens. For the shot where Hans Gruber falls, Chris has already hinted that Alan Rickman was surprised a few times by things in this movie. Shooting Alan Rickman falling from this 21-foot-high model to get the facial reaction as he slowly plummeted. He was holding on to a stuntman and was going to fall into an airbag, but to get the right reaction, they told him they were going to count to 3 and drop him, but they actually dropped him on 2. Which is very mean, and exactly why his face looks like it does.
But yeah, mean, but amazing.
And absolutely works, it really is. And I understand, I read another piece of trivia where they had to basically edit around any time the Hans Gruber character fires a gun, because apparently Alan Rickman flinched every single time he fired a gun on set, and they could not get a take where he didn't. So in the end, they had to use editing to make sure, like, they cut away every time he pulls a trigger, basically, in the movie.
Well, I think he wasn't used to it then, because there's all in the movies that made this episode, they talk about how they had real trouble making him hold the gun straight. Like, apparently he was holding the gun in, like, with a really limp hand. So clearly, maybe he just wasn't that used to guns.
Again, being a theatre actor, I imagine, gunplay probably not very common for him.
Yeah,
so yeah,
completely.
really interesting. So this is interesting. When John runs through the glass shards in his bare feet after Hans and the men shoot out the windows, Bruce Willis is actually wearing special rubber shoes that are designed to look like his own feet. The 1988 equivalent of wearing a mask for COVID, but with your own face printed on it, I guess. Apparently, if you look closely at his feet, they do appear quite unnaturally large in some of the crucial sort of barefoot scenes because he's wearing this stuff. I think that's really interesting, and a good way to edit, get around it and keep the actor safe and comfortable. Thumbs up. Yeah. This might be one of the single greatest pieces of trivia we've ever had, Chris. In the edited for TV version of this movie, John McClane's famous line, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," was changed to, and I swear this is true, I triple checked this. I couldn't find the clip, but to be fair, I mostly spent my time verifying it was true before I said it, but it was changed to "Yippee-ki-yay, melon farmer."
Which is fantastic.
Yippee-ki-yay, melon farmer.
That is brilliant. I want to hear that version. I think there is a compilation on YouTube of all the edits, but you never know if some are fake or whatever. Or yeah,
so I've searched it in YouTube to see if I can find it, and there's a compilation of ridiculously edited for TV movie lines, and then there's a clip from an episode of the Goldbergs called "Yippee-ki-yay, melon farmer," which makes a lot of sense.
So it must definitely be a thing then.
Yeah. I found out it was true, or I wouldn't have repeated it, but I couldn't find the actual audio of him saying that, so it was kind of like, yeah. That's brilliant. I love that so much. Apparently, 20th Century Fox, the production company behind the film, formally described it as a Christmas movie years later, stating that it is the greatest of Christmas stories ever told. In a new trailer to mark the 30th anniversary of the film's release, we are clarifying that it is indeed a Christmas movie, thus ending the debate over the movie's Christmas status. So the studio also did dub it a Christmas movie. Did you find the picture, Chris?
Yes, I'm just about to send it to you now.
So everyone, Chris has indicated that one of the terrorists in the movie resembles British character actor Neil Morrissey, who is very beloved and very popular in this country. If you're not familiar with his work, do look him up. He's a very good actor. He's on a sitcom called Men Behaving Badly, and he had a great little role as well in popular British drama Line of Duty. Now, has Chris misled me, or am I about to see the way that last week I found Jason Alexander, or the voice of at least, in the 1940s film It's a Wonderful Life? Has Chris identified Neil Morrissey in a 1988 film called Die Hard? I'm waiting for it to see. Have you sent it? Is it coming?
I'm just about to.
Oh, he's just sent it. I'm very excited. Is he right or is he wrong, guys? I don't know. Oh, it's tense. I can feel the tension. I can. Can you feel that tension?
Let me add it down. Let me take it as a screenshot.
It's building. Anticipation. Oh, Chris has just gone online on WhatsApp from my side. Oh no, now it's last seen today at 1:40, which is the time now. So he's bailed.
Right, there we go.
It's coming. Oh, here it is. Let's have a look. Yeah, he does look a fair bit like Neil Morrissey. It's partly their hair, but
yeah.
Did you put those two pictures together, or has someone else observed this, and that's why that picture exists?
No, I put the photos together, didn't I?
Yeah.
But even
Wow.
I almost regret putting the photos together, because I think you just see the guy from Die Hard. I think you could definitely see Neil Morrissey.
Yeah, for sure. I'm giving Chris a pass, guys. He's right. The guy does.
Thank you.
The guy does look like Neil Morrissey. Can confirm.
I appreciate that.
We'll put the picture up on Twitter maybe when this goes out, if I remember. It'll be Christmas Day, so maybe not. Cool. So that's all the Die Hard things. Do you have anything else to say on Die Hard? It's a great movie. We love it.
No, yeah, great movie. Love it. I'd honestly be tempted. I think I can't deny if someone says favourite film, I'd be tempted to name Die Hard, because nothing gives me the same experience of just pure, like, literally, fucking Die Hard, yeah! Like, I'm so happy watching Die Hard.
It's so easy to put this movie on thinking you're going to watch it more casually and get sucked right in. And that is a powerful thing.
Yeah, because that's one thing we've not talked about. The tension really works. The whole movie feels incredibly tense and engaging, and yeah, it's brilliant. It's Die Hard.
It's fucking Die Hard, everyone. Get over it.
And I'm impressed with us, Dan, because this review could have easily been that. Just us going, it's fucking Die Hard. I'm impressed we've managed to get some sense out of this review. Go us.
Well, we'll leave that to the listeners to determine.
Well, yeah. That's fair.
So, with that in mind, Chris, now, there's a gap now. It's going to be a little while till we come back. We've got Analysing Avatar is going to be returning as of the 11th of January. If you're wondering why there's a bit of a gap there, it's because we bumped up the Matrix movies to both get them in before Matrix 4 releases, but also to mean that we could line the Christmas movies up with Christmas, because the original schedule had one of the Christmas movies being reviewed in early January, which didn't feel right. So there's going to be a slight gap now before we come back, but it is the original date we, mentioned at the end of the last Analysing Avatar. So Analysing Avatar, we're coming back on the 11th of January for the next episode of that. The first episode of Book 3, Fire. It's very exciting. And then Rewind Reviews itself comes back in June the 7th. We're back for series 5 of this. Now, Chris is probably a bit, I imagine, slightly trepidatious about what I'm about to do, because we created a precedent of choosing a bad movie for the first one.
We did say that should stop.
Correct.
So part of me thinks you're going to go the other way and choose a movie that is definitely good.
You are correct.
Yeah. So that's what I would do in this scenario. If I was in
Yeah.
your position, Dan, I'd do exactly the same thing.
Well, because we both suffered at the hands of All About Steve. And I don't think either of us want a repeat of that. You know.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to think I'm being flippant about it. I really do mean suffered. We watched All About Steve.
Without a doubt.
So as a result, Chris, I'm choosing a movie I know categorically is a good movie. Maybe one of my favourite movies of all time. It's time, Chris. It's time, Chris, for us to finally sit down and watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Very excited about doing this one. I don't believe you're particularly familiar with the movie.
No, I think it was one of the can't believe you've not seen it movies, and I was definitely bought it, and I think the same friend made me sit down and watch it, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Wow, the fact you don't remember if you've seen it or not says a lot.
It suggests I haven't seen it.
Yeah. I actually love this movie so much. I went to a secret cinema special screening of Roger Rabbit where they had people dressed as the characters running around. They did it in like an old sort of like... I'll talk about it when we get there because it was a fun experience. It'd be worth talking about. But they did some really cool stuff related to the film. But I could say that now, but it wouldn't mean anything to you, Chris, having not really remembered the film.
We'll avoid doing that thing we always do, which is repeating
say
ourselves
stuff we should say. Yeah, twice. Yeah. But one of my all-time favorite movies. Honestly, when I was a kid, if you'd asked me my favorite movie pre-Star Wars, it was Back to the Future, but sometimes this. Like, this was up there in that region for me. And still, I think, to this day, holds up as an absolute masterpiece. So, we're gonna talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Very excited to do that one. Very excited to introduce you to that one. Or maybe not, depending on whether when you start watching it, you go, oh yeah, I've seen this one. Which you might do.
I'm excited as well, and I'm also excited to get back into Avatar too.
Yeah, looking forward to that. For anyone who's been following along with analysing Avatar, we're coming back in January, and I'm really excited to get through the third and sort of final season of the original run with Chris, and that's gonna I think that's gonna be a good fun time. I'm very excited. I'm not sure how we're gonna do the finales though, because it's a 4-episode finale, and I don't know, do we watch them and review them together and split it into episodes? We haven't figured it out yet, but we'll do something.
Yeah, we'll work that out.
We'll work that out at the time. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you guys then. Obviously, you can get us in all the usual places. So we're on Patreon, patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. You can give us as little as $1 a month. It gives you 1 week early access to all of this stuff. You can get to it prior to its wide release. Obviously, you can support us in non-financial ways by simply just liking and subscribing and reviewing all of the things. So all of the platforms this is on, if you interact with it in some way, that helps us. And it's free. You can also tell a friend. Say to a friend, hey, do you like the movie Die Hard? Their answer is inevitably going to be yes. And you can say, well, here's a podcast about it. See how easy that is?
If their answer is no, stop being friends with them.
Correct. That is the correct answer.
Done.
Agreed.
That easy, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
So, tell a friend to listen to this podcast. Why not? Or our other podcast, Nothing But Static, which you can also get in all the usual places like iTunes and Spotify and all that good stuff. I'm trying to think. Amazon, Google, whatever it is, Google Play Store that they keep rebranding, whatever it's called now. All of those places you can hear our podcasts. The Nothing But Static podcast is one where we talk about television in an episode we've yet to record but are about to this week. Which will already be out by the time you hear this in December. We're reviewing things like... what are we reviewing? God, my brain just... Okay, The Shrink Next Door, Cowboy Bebop,
Dopesick,
and Dopesick.
Cowboy
Yes.
Bebop.
Yes, very excited to talk about all of those things with Chris. So you can listen to our discussion on that right now over on all of those various platforms.
Around this time, we do probably be, I can't remember. No, I think the plan is in a couple of days from the point you're listening to this, we're releasing an episode where we talk about the Christmas TV you could watch, and I suspect review Hawkeye. So listen out for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chris is gonna find some of the weirdest shit from the British TV schedule. It blew my mind by telling me they're doing like an 8-part drama on fucking Christmas bin or something weird like that. British TV gets weird at Christmas, and Chris always finds the weirdest shit in the TV guide and tells me about it. It's always good fun. So yeah, that episode will be out very, very shortly from when you hear this, and then there'll be an episode in January where we're going to review the season 2 of Lost. You can hear our season 1 of Lost episode right now. Also, there you go. That's things you can check out if you enjoyed this.
Good times.
Cool. So yeah, that's everything. I this is that weird bit where normally I just go from all the spiel at the end into the end.
Well, in that case, Dan, let me take this from you because I know what you're saying, but it's awkward because I do it. So let me say, I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolan.
And this review has been Rewound.
Very, very well done, Chris.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Really
I respect and
like
appreciate all that you do.
Cheers, man. We've got into a habit now of doing add-ons for this, and we have nothing to say.
Wait,
let's
do you
make
think
this
do you think that we had something to say for the last 2 hours?
No, but like the nothing but static add-ons are a stretch, and now we started doing them for this as well. And they're just, yeah, I'm gonna pee. See you later.
And on that optimistic note, hope you have a good Christmas.
Really
or
fizzled
had a
out
good
at
Christmas.
the end. Went from Die Hard to I'm gonna pee. No, but yeah, happy Christmas. Thank you for listening. Go watch Die Hard.
Go watch Die Hard.
Bye.